What's going on, people? Jarmon International. Glad to be back. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm excited today. As you can see, we're in a different environment, different background, and this is going to be one of the best episodes we've had so far. So make sure you tune in to the end. I am joined by a great friend of mine, Greg Cavoli. Greg, you want to greet the people?
Good to see everybody. Happy to be here. Jarmon International.
Yeah. So, as you know, we enjoy providing content, providing different information for you to glean and learn from and apply to your life as leaders. And at the same time, I always have different guests on as well. So different times we have different guests on just to, to speak about their experiences, share some things that maybe can enlighten you on certain topics. And today is another special day with having my great friend Greg on with us today. So, Greg, we have to highlight this before we get started. As everybody can see, obviously we're in a gymnasium. See the ball rack here. But Greg, we have to enlighten the people on where we're at today. Can you expound on just enlighten them where we're at, how this came about, the CAVOLI Barn?
Yeah, we are in the CAVOLI Barn. Before I tell you kind of how it came about, please know I'm happy to have you in the barn because we've been trying to get you in the barn to play hoops for the last 4 years, and you keep dodging us for some reason. So it took this interview to actually get you in here.
I'm here.
So I propose we scrap the interview. I put my sneakers on and we do it right now. And that's probably a bad idea for me, right?
Yeah.
The CAVOLI Barn is basically our home gym, and this is a building that's behind our house, and built it with the house about 4 years ago here in Harrisburg. And it has been really a 10 to 20 year dream of my wife and I to build this. And it has become a place where first the Cavoli family can play, and the family is my wife and I. We've got 4 kids. I got 3 daughters and a son, ages 12, so boys 12 all the way up to my oldest daughter, who's a freshman in college. And I always say they all play basketball, and some of them even like playing, right? And then we got our dog Kobe, named after the Kobe. And it really it started as a place for us to play, for the old man to play. And really, as we've gone on, we've really had great times with the community here. And so we bring in any teams my kids and my friends are connected to. So anything from the rec teams at the younger ages all the way up to the travel teams, and even some of the high school girls come in. They play, they train, girls and boys. And it's been an awesome experience. As we built it 4 years ago, we were excited. There's always some trepidation.
Yeah, right.
And if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have been as nervous about building it because it's been worth it. But anytime you build this monstrosity in your yard, there's some questions.
Yes, most definitely. Well, man, I appreciate you having me. I've heard a lot about it. I've been here before for March Madness.
Yeah, never with your sneakers.
Not with the sneakers. I got my sneakers today, though, Greg. So.
Okay, I might even be able to take your knees. Yeah.
So glad to be here. Glad to have you on the set, Greg. So let's do this. Let's rewind the tape, quote unquote, so to speak. Let's talk about your upbringing, where you're from. Let's kind of bring our audience up to speed on the man behind the method, so to speak. Let's give our audience a chance to get to know Greg, the person.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'm a transplant ultimately from Connecticut, and I was born and raised in Connecticut, as was my wife, and a small town called Marlboro, which is just outside of Hartford. And my parents and my brother are still from that area, so I still get back and see them. So growing up, I had a family similar to my family, 4 kids. So I had 4 brothers and sisters, and they say your life is shaped by things your parents do, right, or things your parents say. And so when I was 4 years old, my dad built a tennis court, built it himself in our backyard.
Okay.
Yeah, and so from age 4 to 10, my brothers and sisters and I became what he used to call great tennis players, right? And maybe we had this trajectory to become professional tennis players. That's what my dad would say. And then at age 10, something happened. He put a basketball hoop on the tennis court. And I never played tennis again. So that's how I was introduced to the game of basketball. I remember there was a hero of mine down the street with an older brother, and he was playing at the high school at the time. And I wanted to aspire to be like him. And so what I learned was basketball is a great sport. It's a sport you can play by yourself, where tennis you really can't. And it's a sport that's obviously great to play with others. So that's kind of where my love of basketball became. And I grew up played at a small high school, but was a pretty good high school player. I then attended the University of Connecticut. And so very quickly my dreams of playing in college went bye-bye, because my first year there, Connecticut really, it was in 1988, 89, and that's when UConn really became a great men's program. I did try out as a walk-on my freshman year, and the legendary Coach Calhoun made it very clear he wasn't going to take any walk-ons, and he beat the hell out of us for about a week in practice, right? So I was bloodied, bruised, and didn't make the team, and went on to have a phenomenal career in intramurals. Okay. Which is nothing to take a stick at UConn, right? I was a all-campus intramural legend, right? Okay. And stayed with my love of the game. I graduated from University of Connecticut, and then started what is now, it's just scary, a 29-year path with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Wow. And it started in Connecticut. Enterprise, we know the name, we rent cars there. It really is a great management training program. It still is today. So I joined right after college with no idea what I wanted to do, and just started by cleaning cars and picking up customers. I did the math the other day. I got paid $6 an hour, right? and $9 with overtime, right? Right. So I was back a few years ago, and Enterprise allows you to kind of go up a career ladder, and for the most ambitious, probably the folks with the best work ethic get that opportunity. And I think it took a lot of my basketball competitiveness and aspirations, and realized I wasn't going to make the NBA anytime soon. And I brought that over to the rental car industry, right? And so 29 years later, I became, I am here today as a general manager of Enterprise in Pennsylvania. I had one stop between Connecticut and here. I spent 5 years in Philadelphia. And that was a really great experience for me, because that was my first opportunity to be in and near a big city. The great sports out there, the great culture, and I really cherished that experience. Harrisburg kind of brought me back to what I was used to, though, because Harrisburg is very similar to where I grew up, Hartford, Connecticut. And my wife and I have really loved the area. We love raising our kids here. And so it was really about 5 or 6 years ago where we said, there were some opportunities to continue to move with Enterprise, and we said, And once we did that, I promised her we'd build her a house, which is over there, and then I got the barn. Okay. One thing my dad said, and it's funny because I don't know if you think back to something growing up. So I come home, I'm like 12 years old, and my buddy down the street, he was one of these guys that always liked to one-up you. And his dad came home with a brand new car, like a hot car. And he talked about it all day, and he showed me. And I came home with my old man, I said, Pops, how come we don't have a fancy car? So I'm looking out the driveway, we had a brown station wagon, right? 4 kids, right? Right. And he said something I'll never forget. He says, son, I make decisions to put my money in the backyard for the family. And we had the tennis court back there and the basketball court. We had a swing set and a sandbox, and I never forgot that. And so growing up, and as I started to raise a family, I really thought about that. And so I don't have that fancy a car in the driveway, although I just got a new one. It's coming in, the pickup truck. Right? But this is actually the 3rd edition of the CAVOLI Barn. So in Connecticut, before we left, we had a basketball court in the backyard, just an outdoor one. And then when I first moved here down the street, there's a basketball court. So everywhere I've built a house or had a house, I've left a little basketball. I've helped spread the love of basketball. There you go. Yeah. Well, yeah, man, you have a great story. I want to, the month of February is, our theme is honor. We're kind of exploring that topic
talking about in different ways and, giving a different perspective on doing that. I just want to, I'm honored to have you here today. I appreciate you, and I want to highlight a lot of things you shared speaks to your professionalism, doing well as far as in your profession, your heart for your family man, your 4 kids, your wife. And the next thing I want to get to, kind of to piggyback off of that, is you've decided to get involved in coaching, okay? I know it's been some time now. You and I have had some, we always chop it up about basketball, about college and pro, but I also respect your level of expertise. Whenever we're talking about the game, you have a certain understanding and X's and O's and so forth, and understanding players. What motivated you to get involved with coaching? You want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, to me, it's really, if I look at my life, it's really probably my destiny, right? As corny as that sounds, and maybe it's something after I quit my day job. Maybe it's something I do more on a full-time basis. I don't know what level. But when I'm in college and when we're trying to figure out what, mom and dad ask, what do you want to do, right? Teaching came up, right? And I think at that point it came up because I love kids. I love being around kids. Even before I had kids, I love my nieces and nephews, and just something about being around younger people. And I love the reward you feel when you teach someone something. I didn't pursue that as a degree. So when I got out, I was fortunate to join Enterprise, and there is a teaching component to it. And people call it managing, I call it coaching, right? So I had different levels of teams. My first branch, I had 5 employees, and that was my team. So I kept that fire burning, and then along the way, still playing basketball, and I realized, I don't know if you realize this, I'm like one of the most uncultured people you'll ever meet, I think. I know how to rent cars, and I know basketball. And I used to regret that, and now I kind of embrace it. And my life is basketball, right? I love watching it, I love being around it, obviously, I love talking about it. And so when you combine those things, kind of a love and a passion to develop and train kids with this sport you want to be around, over the last, I've been coaching the last 12 years, it really feels like I found my niche. It started like a lot of us start coaching my kids, and it actually didn't start in basketball. It started in soccer, which I knew nothing about, but that's the sport kids play when they're 5, I guess. Coached all 4 of my kids in soccer, and what I started to learn, my dad would give me a lot of advice along the way because he coached me growing up. And I started to learn, I mentioned this to you the other day, G, it was such an honor for me to coach my kids. It was something I loved so much, I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to lose it. And I read books about it, I watch podcasts about it, and those horror stories and I meet a lot of people that just can't coach their kid. And it's good that they understand it. And I never wanted to get to that point. I always wanted my kids to come home to mom and say, can dad coach me? And I'm happy to tell you, for the most part, that's been the case. I got 1 or 2 examples where it didn't work out so well, but
we all do.
Yeah. So it started at the youngest ages through soccer. Once they started to become competitive in soccer, I quickly had to tip my hat out, and it was over my head. And then as they reached grade school, I started to coach basketball. That started at the skill builder level. I got very involved in local leagues. I still am. I'm on the boards. And then I coached them through the travel leagues. And then I hooked up with a good friend of ours locally in the AAU.
Yeah.
And that's when it started to get serious. And really, kids were really taking it serious. And I've loved every level of it. For the first time 2 years ago, I started coaching kids that weren't mine, right? So that's a lot to ask of mama, because I got big responsibilities here. But so twice a week, we have 5th and 6th grade CD girls, local high school girls, come in and do a travel league. And none of my kids are on the team for the first time. I wasn't sure how I was going to like it. Actually might like it more. because there's not as much pressure.
Yep.
Right? Because I can worry about 9 kids that aren't mine. I don't have to worry about one that has my last name. And there's certain dynamics there. And I worry a little bit that I'm taking time away from my family. But get this, my assistant coach is my college freshman, my daughter. And so she actually has aspirations to coach someday.
Okay.
Who knows how serious she'll take it, but she sits on the sideline with me. And so and practices with us. So we have this great experience together.
Wow.
And she thinks, I asked her the other day, I said, how's Dad doing coaching? Because this one's critical, right? You get different, this one. And she says, I do okay. Okay, so she's very quick.
She's going to be honest.
Yeah. When my son was 5 years old and we're on the soccer field. And so picture, 10 5-year-old boys and me trying to lasso them in. And boys are crazy. That's another whole conversation. And I just couldn't get him to behave. And he's crying on the sideline, carrying on. I have no assistant coach, so you can imagine the disruption. So at one point I just said, Mike, sit your butt down for the rest of the practice. And he's like this the whole time. Finish the practice. The other parents are watching, not helping. They're just, it's a little sideshow.
Right.
And I get home, and of course I feel terrible, right? And I'm like, what went wrong? And as I talk to him, I realize that this is one of our first practices, and he never knew me as coach. He only knows me as dad. And Dad gives him full attention, right? Dad doesn't talk to him like I was talking to him, like, I wasn't being mean, I was just being direct. Get in line. Dad doesn't give more attention to little Jimmy over here. And so I got this from a book, what I very quickly did was I sat and I said, Mike, Dad's got 2 hats. And the dad hat, that's the one you like, right? When we go to the field, I'm coach. And let me tell you, I started to define what it was to be coach. And either I was a good salesman or he's a smart kid and he got it. And the next practice, I told him on the way, I'm like, I actually had a hat. So I put my coach hat on. So remember, okay, Dad. Yeah. I lost my cool one time. So that's the other thing, geez, I think you have to have patience to coach, period. You definitely have to have patience to coach your kid. And as we started to get more competitive, my middle daughter is a freshman. We're on a very competitive AAU team, playing some of the top teams in the area. And toward the end of the game, strategy, right, it was, we had a nice little lead. Don't take a shot. Don't force the ball, right? And we had a timeout. Assistant coach and I talked about that. My assistant coach, Coach Corey. Well, like she didn't even hear her. She comes out, she chucks up a shot, and Corey calls it. And I take my hand and I slam it against the chair, and I say, "What are you thinking?" And red-faced. And I don't do that, right? So I think it's funny because all the other players were like this. My daughter actually handled it pretty well. You have to have an assistant coach, and Coach Corey is a good friend of mine, good friend of yours. And Coach Corey and his daughter was on the team too, so we had a deal where if it got heated, he would coach my kid, and I would coach his kid. And that's not perfect, wasn't perfect, but and so Coach Corey took over the rest of the game. We ended up winning, right? I shouldn't have ordered every well. I went up to my daughter Megan after, and I said, "Buddy, you okay?" And she was like, "Yeah, why?" I said, "What Dad just did is unacceptable. Parents, coaches make mistakes. I apologize. And if I ever do that again, I will never coach you again." And at the time, she's like, "Yeah, whatever, Dad, you're fine." But
Right.
hopefully that sunk in, and I never forgot that. And I actually had this moment where, and I love coaching that kid. Right? She's the type of kid you just want to coach. And I don't anymore because she's older. But I had this moment where, if someone was going to take that away from me, I'm thinking that would kill me, right? So, 2 good lessons I learned. Fortunately, I still coach both. I still coach my son, and my daughter I just stopped coaching because she's older. So,
Right.
yeah.
And that's, we talked about this, a couple of days ago, just the idea of being able to, the challenges that come along with coaching your child, your son or your daughter. And I don't know if there's any viewers out there who are in that position. It can be challenging, because there's so many different dynamics that's going on all at one time. You have the challenges of playing time, people watching you. And I've heard of situations, and I've actually counseled a lot of dads who are coaching, and some of them share stories. Parents will come to them after the game. Your son played X amount of minutes, and my son only played X amount of minutes. So you have that pressure, playing time. You have the pressure of, are you giving too much rope to your son or daughter in the game? Everybody's watching that, so it's definitely a challenge, and I just kind of wanted you to, and I'm glad you did, expound on some of that, because hopefully, someone who's watching, maybe in that situation, I know myself, I think one of the things, and this goes beyond the court, and this can translate into real life situations, and some I want to extract from what you said, Greg, is as a dad / coach, you had the ability, or you were willing to apologize when you were wrong. And a lot of times as parents, our pride can get in the way. And I want to extract from that, because I had to do that with my son. I remember one time, because I coached my son in the AU for 8 years, and I didn't make every decision right. I didn't do everything correctly, but I learned from a lot. So the one time I got on my son in practice one time, and actually looking back on it, he wasn't wrong, but I lashed out in front of everybody. I just lashed out, dug into him, and kept going to practice. On the car ride home, it was quiet in the car, and then the next day when I went to work, I was just thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I kind of was out of place, in my reaction to my son, and emotions get involved when it's your own kid. You know that. Your emotions get involved.
Yep.
So the next day, Greg, this is what I did. We're about to wrap it up here, but the next day, I went to practice in front of the whole team. I said, guys, there's something I want to do before we start practice. I want to apologize to my son for how I reacted yesterday. I was wrong and out of place, and G, I call my son G. He's G2. He's G3, actually. I'm G2. I said, I want to apologize to you. I was wrong for that. Will you forgive me? And I said, sometimes coaches, we miss the mark. We get it wrong. And you can tell it brought up, the players were just, there was a new level of respect for me, but also for my assistant coaches too, because I think they saw an appreciation for me in doing that. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm thinking back at how much more powerful it would have been if I apologized to my daughter in front of her teammates. And the team, the son, G3, I'm sure appreciated that even a little more. There's some, as we're talking, there's something about being vulnerable as a coach, and probably any leader. This is important. And I think too often we're scared to be vulnerable because we're supposed to be the ultimate decision maker. We're supposed to have all the answers. It is extremely powerful once you've earned the respect, which I think we do, to be vulnerable. And I read listened to this podcast about coaching and how important it was, and being able to, not just with your kid, but being able to go into your team and say, hey, coach isn't always right. Coach made a mistake. And so I was so excited I walked into my practice the next day after listening to this podcast, and I had 7th grade girls at the time. And I said, I got to apologize for something. So I pulled them all in the corner, and I got real serious. And so when I'm in here, this is the barn, right? I got the mic. I don't make mistakes, right? Or I'm not supposed to. And I pulled the girls aside. I said, girls, Coach Greg's got to apologize for something. No, right? I remember the last practice, we went 30 minutes without doing a drink break. And one of the kids had recognized it, right? It was this big a deal. Right. And I said, we work really hard in here, and that's really important. And I just wanted to tell you that. I thought about that overnight, and I really made a mistake. I'll have you know, 3 girls came up to me during practice, kind of put their arm around me and say, Coach, it's okay. We love you so much. Right, so it's like the power of being vulnerable. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so for like 2 weeks, I would always try to find something where I did wrong and just say, hey, I wanted to, probably overdid it. Right?
No, that's a great point, because being vulnerable, and being able to humble yourself. And we're talking the coaching arena, but this translates also to in life. Parents, when you have kids, being open to asking for forgiveness when you do something wrong. So that's important. But man, I'm privileged. Again, I'm honored to have you on the set today. Well, thank you for tuning in today. Stay tuned. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Definitely appreciate that. We may do this again sometime.
Yeah.
Right? May have you on again sometime. And maybe we'll have a one-on-one session on film, on camera. So, all right, thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great day. Always remember, you're destined for greatness.